In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data. So we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Mark Anthony Arena.
From the Wallace Memorial microphone in my living room, back in the hills of Weston, New York, this is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. My name is Mark Anthony Arena. I am so glad you have joined me today. We're going to do a solo teaching episode, and we're going to blast through some articles that have been burning a hole in my pocket, so to speak. So I'm glad you're here. Here we go. We're going to dive right into it. This is an article that I cited in my forthcoming book, Don't Be Taken by Silicon Valley. And the article is from Wikipedia, and it is a definition of a term that I think everyone should know. It's called the second system effect. The second system effect, or syndrome, is the tendency for a successful first system, often small and relatively elegant, to be followed by a second system that becomes over-engineered or bloated. This effect is commonly attributed to increased confidence after the first success and to accumulated ideas that were deferred from the first and then added en masse to the second. And they also cite the book The Mythical Man Month, when IBM transitioned from simple operating systems to more ambitious ones. And they say an architect's first system is often spare and clean because the designer is still learning and is cautious about uncertain generalizations. The second system is the most dangerous because the designer is more confident and tempted to incorporate every previous deferred improvement, optional feature, and generalization, resulting in a successor that is harder to build, understand, and evolve. This effect is closely related to the concept of feature creep, where the second system attempts to anticipate too many future needs, right? They're in the game and they're in the groove, and they want to add more stuff. They're like, hey, we're here to stay. Let's keep adding more garbage, rather than serving the current validated requirements. And you'll notice, and I talk about this in the book, I give the analogy of movie sequels, right? There are plenty of movies we love, right? Boondock Saints and Caddyshack and The Matrix and you name it. And then they feel as though they have to come out with a sequel just to make more money. And the sequel is bloated and cluttered and cringeworthy and so on, right? Like The Matrix was an incredible movie. It explained how the future was going to be, and it predicted it almost exactly. And then The Matrix, if you notice in the opening scenes of The Matrix Reloaded, it's like they're all getting together for a reunion and slapping high fives and stuff. In the fourth Matrix, they did that as well. It's like, no, guys, you're ruining the mystique of it all. And so the other analogy I use is the Cat in the Hat, where it's like the Cat in the Hat, where he comes over to your house and he says he's going to clean up and then he makes it worse. And that's really what update attacks do, right? So update attacks are just the implementation of this on a micro level, where it's like, hey, you know what? We're going to change everything all the time and make each thing worse one at a time. All right, next one is another spam I got from a scam organization called Domain Listings out of Las Vegas. They mailed me a sheet of paper that said, your website is about to expire and you need an annual website domain listing. All right, domain listing is around $20, okay, $18 to $20 per year. So these people attacked, and even if nothing else, right? Even if nothing else, They attacked with a bill for $288, okay? So even if they weren't scammers trying to hijack my website, which is what they are doing, and even if they didn't put in the micro fine print that this website listing offers provided to leading websites to enhance visibility and connect with new customers, we're not a domain registrar and we do not register domain names. Wait, so what are you actually doing if you're not a domain registrar? You're not actually doing anything. So I was about to say that if they were just a registrar who was more expensive, right? 20, 30 times the price. But no, this is an evil scam. So they're not a registrar at all. So you just write them a check and then it connects you with new customers. Or rather, it connects them with you. It's an absolute scam. Domainlistings.directory. They are an absolute scam. So anytime you get any letter in the mail saying your website is about to expire, it's an evil scammer using publicly available information, right, to hijack your website, to claim. You look at it and most people are just mindless, right? Most small businesses I've been to have no idea what any of their passwords are. They just mindlessly pay all their bills. I've said this before. So this one doesn't even hijack your website, I don't think. It's not a registrar. It just connects you with them. So you give them a check and then nothing happens. It's a horrific scam. It's a horrific scam. And the only thing that will ever stop them, obviously laws aren't stopping them because lawmakers are still using Microsoft Outlook. So the only thing that'll ever stop them is this show right here, the Computer Exorcist Podcast. All right, next one. And another great example of that concept is this. I got this one from Bobby D, and he says, how Amazon is secretly raising prices across the entire internet. Amazon expert Jason Boyce explained the following. Amazon is using advanced bots, right? They're little evil software scripts to scour the internet looking for other sellers offering their same products for less money. Then they are suppressing the buy box. Which I'm not sure if they mean they're suppressing the button to buy that product on other websites or on their own website. And it severely limits the seller's ability to advertise and drive traffic to their listings. Now imagine if they were colluding with Google and telling Google to change the listings, right? You know when you go on Google and you type in a product and then Google shows you some prices, Google gets a huge cut of that, and most of the time the prices are wrong. There's like some too good to be true price, and then you click on it, it brings you to the website, and it's totally different. There's a lot of this gerrymandering kind of thing going on out there, okay, folks? In order to compete with this, sellers are forced to use rivals like Walmart or eBay and raise their prices on those lower cost markets. This gives Amazon a huge advantage over competitors, including their own sellers. So this is yet another way how Amazon crushes its own sellers. They also crush their own sellers by looking for successful products and then copying them. All right? And they also, and just like every Silicon Valley company, they will also buy competitors and crush them. Like they bought diapers.com and crushed them. This is essentially price fixing, and it should be Congress's job and the FTC's job to step in. There are a lot of bills awaiting approval, but Congress has been asleep at the wheel for too long and actually has lower approval ratings than Amazon. That's so great. And that's it. Again, these Congress people are using Microsoft Outlook, which means they are 30 years behind the times. They have no clue about anything about technology. And so, meanwhile, Amazon has accrued monopolistic power over the whole internet and made it impossible for sellers to compete. All right. So first of all, Amazon is also known as Relentless, right? That was Jeff Bezos's nickname for it. And as is the case with most television shows and movies, someone who's relentless should eventually relent, okay? If you keep driving hard and keep that fighting spirit, even though you're a big guy, you're eventually going to make a lot of enemies and eventually destroy yourself. So most of these folks, again, most of the people in Silicon Valley don't have prefrontal cortexes. They don't have a well-formed conscience. They don't have a conscious mind to make decisions. They are robots who keep doing the same thing over and over again and have never considered the consequences of anything they've done. And stay tuned for more of that sort of rants in my book. And again, Congress is the most ineffective thing ever. And this article did much more good because it raises awareness. The only thing in the universe, and that is the entire point of my book, the only thing in the universe that will stop these forces is awareness, because the government is the least effective thing ever. And folks, look, I know a lot of these consumer protection agencies are pointing this stuff out, and believe me, I agree with you, right? I am right there with you saying these companies are evil. But on the other side of the coin, the government is the last possible thing to fight them. It's the least ineffective thing, okay? So that's the deal there. It's a double-edged sword. Next, I want to talk to you about a YouTube video called The Light Bulb Conspiracy. I highly recommend you watch it. They go into history and talk about the invention of the light bulb, and apparently light bulbs could have been made to last much longer. But why would we? Right? We're going to design a product that destroys itself, and people will just accept this as fact. They will just say, oh, well, that's life. So apparently the light bulb could actually last a lot longer if it was designed a different way. And same thing today. Well, you had about 100 years ago, Alfred Sloan decided to invent planned obsolescence, right? Where it's, oh, hey, you know what? Your car's not broken, but you buy a new one anyways. Nowadays, the concept I've introduced is forced obsolescence, where Apple and HP and Sonos are forcing these products to die, or designing them to die in the case of HP, so that you're just not allowed to use them anymore, even if you wanted to. All right, and again, all of this boils down to the fallacy that breaking things will stimulate the economy. Look, breaking products I guess they call it the broken window fallacy. Breaking things will stimulate some people's wallets, but it just moves the money around. It doesn't actually help the economy as a whole to grow. But again, people are pea-brains, and they've never had any kind of moral instruction. All right, and side note, shout out to Flyover Plates Podcast. That's if for some reason you like me and you want to hear me talk about things that aren't evil computers, then check out the Flyover Plates Podcast. I'm the co-host of it, and the host is a guy named Dr. Mike, who's a high school buddy. And we talk about food, and we make fun of Rochester, and we memorialize all of the businesses that go out of business every day in Rochester, because every business in Rochester goes out of business every day. So it's a comedy podcast about food and businesses, and it's a lot of fun. This past month, we did a pizza battle with 2 different pizzerias in Pittsburgh. It was a blast. So that's that. All right, back to some articles. Just going to read a headline here. It says, Ralph Nader calls on NHTSA and HTSA to recall Tesla's dangerous full self-driving. Last year, a buddy and I test drove a Tesla, and we let the full self-driving test drive us, so to speak. The Tesla itself was fun to drive, and the Cybertruck was actually scary nimble, right? It has electric steering, so you don't even feel it. It's extremely light steering, even though it's a massive pickup truck. So that's scary in and of itself. But then you add this full self-driving, where the vehicle actually drives itself. And we just mapped out, we pointed to a thing on the map and told it to drive us there, and it did. And it drove in a busy section of Henrietta in Rochester, and it was okay. I didn't fear for my life like all those Waymo passengers. Look, go on TikTok and look at all the Waymo disasters. They're probably on YouTube as well, where Waymo is a competitor to Tesla, and they do evil self-driving cars as well, and the cars just keep screwing up, and sometimes a bunch of them screw each other up if they're all in a row waiting for a train or something. That's a disaster. As far as the full self-driving, in my professional opinion, it is scary good. Like, it's really good, but that's scary too, right? And full disclosure, I am a stockholder in Tesla, but still, I'm not afraid to make fun of them, as y'all know. I will certainly criticize them. So look, I agree that we should just we should outlaw self-driving cars, but it ain't going to be that easy, because as you know, with government, they're utterly ineffective, and Silicon Valley is infinitely more powerful than any government we've ever seen. And I predict that they will supplant government, because that is their goal. So ever notice when you're using your computer and you get those punishment noises, right? They love controlling and punishing and micromanaging. All right, having fun out there? A few more articles here. I got a big stack of articles in my thing today. We're going to get through a lot of them. Oh, yeah, a lot of them going on here. Let's see. What are we going to look at next? Speaking of Silicon Valley microcontrolling you, this article here is from Y Combinator, which is a venture capital group, and it's a forum, and they say Hacker News is the subforum. And here's the article. Instagram can track anything you do on any website in their in-app browser. All right, and to clarify this, so you can go to your own web browser in your phone, right? Safari or Chrome or whatever, and that's fine. But if you are inside of Instagram and use their web browser inside of that, then they can track you. And I suppose that's to be expected, right? And again, no one knows any of this stuff. People have no clue what's being done to them and whatever. But as a computer guy, I would say, why are you using the browser inside of Instagram? Well, people don't know. They have no clue. Again, they don't know the difference between texting and Facebook Messenger. No one knows any of this stuff. And even the software developers on this Hacker News forum, one guy says, I was super confused by this since, to the best of my knowledge, the SF Safari View controller blocks anything like this. Honestly, I thought all of the methods had been deprecated or obsoleted, and had no idea apps could still make use of the less secure options. Trust me, as a developer, I've wanted to reach inside SF Safari View controller, which is a software mechanism, many times to make my life easier. But in the end, I've just grumbled and assumed it's not possible and worked around it. And that's the case with all software, because all software is evil and you have to work around it. I wish there was a privacy-safe way to get the best of both worlds, but due to bad actors, I doubt that's possible. I need to look into app-bound domains. Something like post-message support for SF Safari View Controller would be amazing and be safe privacy-wise. I think the contained page would need to support sending and receiving messages instead of just having code injected against their will. Right? And even I'm confused at this point. It's nuts. Then someone else says, but the solution isn't to enforce a specific browser or way to access web content. The solution is to educate users about the toxic software landscape on smartphones and the security threat of using apps. I say this in the book. Apps are not necessary in most cases, right? You can go to the actual mobile website on your mobile browser, on your mobile device, and you can use that site. But then they attack with vicious, relentless pop-ups attacking, saying, you need to download our app instead. Download our app instead. You need to download our app. And they make it near impossible, in a lot of cases impossible, and they beg you to download the app. The purpose of an app is to install a program in your phone, and then you use that particular website through their app. And the whole purpose, the main purpose of an app is to track your behavior. Track your website behavior, track your physical location, in the rare case that you actually leave your home, and so on. So, yes, all software is evil and toxic, and like this guy said, that and also that the purpose of apps is to spy on you, and we need to educate consumers about that. All right, a couple more. TechCrunch.com. Google is fined $40 million for misleading location tracking settings. Google has been sanctioned 60 million Australian dollars, which is 40 million US dollars, in Australia over Android settings it had applied dating back about 5 years, which were found to have misled consumers about location data collection. In actuality, another setting called Web and App Activity also enabled Google to grab your location data, and this was turned on by default, as the Australian court noted in a press release today, aka a classic dark pattern. All right. So a couple things. I talk about the Google history scandal. That's my name for it. The Google history scandal is the fact that the entire planet has no clue that if you're a Gmail member, Google records a list of every website you go to in your life. All right, that is called the Google history scandal. It is a horrific scandal, and nobody on this planet is aware of it. I'm the only one who is exposing this. So these folks here, luckily, there's someone down in Australia who also discovered the scandal, and they're pointing it out, that this web and app activity is where Google records a list of every website you ever go to. And it's they're also using a dark pattern, which is a manipulative thing where you go to an evil website and an evil pop-up comes up and they nudge you, they push you desperately toward picking the option that is in their best interest, picking the option that is not in your best interest, right? So you'll have a microscopic thing that says leave me alone and then a giant button that says, yes, I want to give Google everything in the world. So that's horrible. So what they're doing here is they're saying Google deployed nested dark patterns. All right, so that's manipulative sentences and option buttons inside of manipulative windows, inside of manipulative software, inside of manipulative options and buttons. So that's pretty wild. They also say Google's spokesperson said, we can confirm that we've agreed to settle the matter concerning historical conduct from 2017-18. We've invested heavily in making location information simple to manage and easy to understand with industry-first tools like auto-delete controls, while significantly minimizing the amount of data stored. As we've demonstrated, we're committed to making ongoing updates that give users control and transparency while providing the most helpful products possible. And look, okay, fine, your products are helpful, right? Google Search and Google Maps are awesome. I'll give you that. Google Maps works pretty well most of the time. And for those poor Australians who tried to use Apple Maps, some people actually drove off a bridge. Apple Maps guided someone off a bridge. Anyway, but look, 0% of people are aware of this, right? If you know the secret website called google.com/history, then you can go to the evil, simple to manage and easy to understand controls, which are neither simple nor easy to understand. But 0% of people are aware of this. Also, your auto-delete thing where it's like, all right, we won't keep a list of everything you've ever done in your life. How about just the past year? So they're throwing you a bone, right? When they get desperate, they start bargaining. That's like the whole scandal in Germany where the German school system discovered that Microsoft was recording keystrokes. They were doing a legalized keylogger, recording everything they're typing. And instead of acquiescing, Microsoft said, okay, fine, how about we record your keystrokes from our office in Germany? And they said, oh, okay, that's fine. And they fell for it. Anyway, so December 2018, Google instructs consumers that the setting saves your searches, Chrome browsing history, and activity from sites and apps that use Google services before nudging them to a pre-selected option to save my web and activity to my Google account. Okay, so again, it's pushing people, it's manipulating them into giving Google the information because people have no clue what's going on. So in the rare case when Google is legally required to ask for a user permission, they're going to be as manipulative and disgusting as possible, right? And all big tech does this. So Google will also show them a confusing pop-up to say pause location history, right? So if you're the 7 or 8 people on Earth who have stumbled on the Google history scandal website, google.com/history, if you try to turn off the switches, they pop up with a cartoon pop-up that chastises you. And it says, are you sure you want to pause location history? It'll limit the functionality of Google products over time, which is wrong and evil. And the author of this article says it was probably mostly there to spread FUD, or fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Right? It's always, you're going to live a limited lifestyle if you don't give in to this. You're not going to have a good life. So I like how they say that, FUD. And you're gonna have a miserable life unless you obey us. One contains a full 5 possible actions a user could take. A sure fit of choice, obviously intended to bamboozle them into leaving it on because it's so drastically unclear what anything else on the screen means, right? If you give someone 5 choices, people are pea-brains and they're controlled by their subconscious, as I've been saying the whole episode, and they don't know how to make decisions anymore, conscious decisions, about ultra-complex technology and privacy options worded to be as complex and confusing as possible. They don't know what's going on, and Google knows it. So we're going to give them 5 ultra-complex options. And in that particular case, maybe Google developers thought they were being helpful, but a lot of developers have runaway brains, as I say in the book, and they just give too much information, and they just spew all sorts of information. And I'm guilty of that too, where I used to give clients way too much information, and now I've learned how to boil it down to simple options. So imagine seeing this huge pile of information and these 5 very verbose options, and people are confused and they're just going to leave it on. So that's convenient for Google. All right. Y'all want to do one more article. This is autoblog.com. Apple makes a CarPlay for more of your dashboard, more of your data. All right, so that's like Apple making a play for your data, but it's a play on words because their evil software is called Apple CarPlay. It's hard to imagine now that Apple CarPlay is in 98% of new vehicles, but when the feature was first introduced in 2014, automakers worried about what Apple and Google would be able to access. German automakers in particular expressed alarm, and I remember talking about that article a couple years ago where Volkswagen execs sat down with Google, and Google wanted to have a sensor in the seat to record how fat the passengers were. All right? And the Volkswagen guys walked away with a bad taste in their mouth. They're like, what are these freaks trying to do to us here? And in the case of... and also Toyota held off on adding CarPlay until 2019, and they held off with Android Auto until 2020. And I get it, right? People come to expect CarPlay and Android Auto, and it works relatively well. It plops on your screen your maps and music and pop-ups for text messages, I believe, and that's really it. And it's relatively simple, but here's the deal. They're starting to get greedy, as always, right? And they are spilling over. As I say, the arrogance of my computer industry is spilling over into the car industry, but the computer companies themselves are now spilling over into the car industry and trying to take it over, all right? So even though Apple hasn't produced its own car yet, they are still taking over other people's cars. So, you know what's interesting is General Motors doesn't even want to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. They are making their own evil app. And that's sort of cool. I get it. This is a tough one. This is Godzilla versus Mothra, right? This is 2 giants fighting over control of us. And in the end, only us little ants down on the ground are going to be stepped on, right? Nothing good will come of this. So GM says, you know what? We don't want your garbage software in our cars. And that's fine. I get it. They're saying we don't want you recording our drivers. But then they record the drivers and sell all the data. And we'll talk about that in a future article. There's an article called Who's Collecting Data from Your Car? Anyway, so GM wants to use their own app for better or for worse. It's not going to work. I can guarantee it's not going to work as well as the Google or Apple apps, right? It'll be an app, a GM-only app that you install in your smartphone, and then it does the connection to the screen. Why don't they make a universal app? You know, like WiDi, it's wireless display. Why don't they do that? Or just use the USB-C interface on these new phones to connect to the screen so that it's just you. There's no evil companies, no evil software, no evil cloud dependency. Why don't they just make a universal standard where the phone talks to the car locally and displays the screen and nothing else? Because that would make too much sense, right? We really need to just override all of this evil cloud stuff, right? When all these software developers are kicked out of their jobs because of AI, they should go home and do some open source projects that help liberate humanity. Really, we don't need any of this cloud stuff. We don't need any of it. It's evil. And please buy cars that are older than, let's say, 2020, because then they don't have all these data collection stuff in them. Okay, CarPlay and Android Auto succeeded in making certain smartphone features available to drivers in a generally seamless way, and now there's no putting the tech genie back in the bottle, right? Like I said, they made it easier for consumers, and that's how they do it. Same thing with Amazon. They succeeded by making things easy for us initially, and then they dig their claws in and take advantage of us eternally from then on. They're taking over every screen in a car and making an even larger data grab. And automakers are once again wringing their hands, which could be tied at this point, right? So they got all these smartphone addicts out there, people who are addicted to Apple and Google and whatever, and they use their phones in their cars, fine. Look, I just use the real headphone jack on my real phone to plug into my car because I still have a real aux jack, and I just listen to music and nothing else. And I was driving my buddy's kids around the other day, and they said, "Uncle Mark, how are you going to get there?" And I said, "I just know where to go. In worst case, I'll just put the Google map on my phone and listen to it give me instructions. I don't need to connect to Android Auto. It's evil." And they're just used to seeing their parents use the screens on the dashboard and whatever, and that's fine. But the point is, you don't need any of this stuff. It's all evil. One time last year, I brought them in my antique car, and they said, "Uncle Mark, where's the screen?" I said, "It doesn't have one." And they said, "Well, how do you get places?" It was great. I said, "You just know." And again, if you need to, you tell your smartphone to give you voice directions. At the Consumer Electronics Show this year, both BMW and Stellantis, which is Chrysler's parent company, revealed a relationship with Amazon to bring content into cars, and Google announced partnerships with Volvo, GM, and others. The new version of CarPlay seems to be a much deeper integration and accesses more car data than previous versions. They're also trying to hijack the binnacle, the instrument cockpit, the instrument cluster, right? Your speedometer and tachometer and so on. They predict that the better native OEM infotainment systems will fare well against CarPlay's further encroachment, right? So in other words, these automakers have to step up and make their own infotainment that doesn't depend on Google and Apple. I know that GM and Audi right now use Google-based everything in their infotainment, even if you don't use a smartphone at all. They're using Google technology in the dashboard. And so they need to step up if they want to defend themselves against Apple and Google's encroachment. The OEMs, or auto manufacturers, who have terrible user interfaces will basically just have to hand over this major touch point to the Apples and Googles of the world. Okay, and again, Google's AAOS is geared toward enabling them to build great native user interfaces while maintaining a strong and unique brand identity. So it'll be a lot of fun to see how it plays out. So Google AAOS is the software that Audi and GM are using, the Google technology in the dashboard, right? Again, that's separate from a smartphone. And they're saying, "Ooh, it's customizable. You can even have a unique brand identity." But meanwhile, it's still Google under the hood. They don't care if you slap your brand sticker on the front. It's still them controlling and monitoring, and that's all they care about. So indeed, it will be a lot of fun to see how this plays out. And again, buy old cars and boycott everything. And look, I'm not a communist, right? I really want to buy products and I want to make money and I want to see people succeed. But how about succeeding like we did in the 80s, where people actually provided products and then you bought them and then they were yours and you owned them? None of this evil control garbage. Speaking of Amazon content, I remember years ago, like 10 years ago, this guy bought an Amazon Echo Dot, those little handheld Alexa. They look like a hockey puck and you can talk to Alexa with it. And he just plopped it in his car and used the real aux jack to plug into his real aux jack of his car stereo, and then plugged the power cord into a little USB charger on his dashboard, and then he plopped the thing in the armrest, and he was able to talk to Amazon in his car. Yes, Amazon still records everything you do, but he was able to enjoy music and hands-free talking and whatever, and do so without Amazon controlling the entire car. So 10 years ago, that looked bad to me, but nowadays that actually looks relatively good, because at least it was just an Amazon hockey puck sitting there, and it wasn't controlling the entire car. It was just using an aux jack for the sound waves, and that was it. So instead of a cash grab, I suppose you could call this a dash grab. They are vying for control of your dashboard. All right. I don't know about y'all, but I'm tired. I got to get on the road. I'm giving a speech tonight and then going on a little road trip so I can finish my book cover. The book is totally done. I just need to create a book cover for it. The illustrations are absolutely incredible. It'll either be called Don't Be Taken by Silicon Valley or Don't Be Taken by Big Tech, something like that. It's going to be amazing, and I can't wait to hear what you think. You can get a preview edition right now on my website, which is thecomputerexorcist.com. For a limited time only, get the preview edition free. Thanks so much for listening. Please tell your friends about the show. Please tell any organizations you're a part of about all these scandals, and I'm willing to give speeches to organizations. That's what I'm going to do with the rest of my career. And talk to you next week. I'm going to try to get Cousin Joey on.